Thank you for listening to Hustle and Heart. I'm your host, Edie Weintraub. Today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Nick Leahy, culinary expert with over 25 years of experience in the hospitality industry. He's the visionary behind two huge culinary brands, Harvest Hospitality and Vice Kitchen. Chef Nick's passion for food extends beyond the restaurants as well. He was the first ever chef to be elected to the Board of Trustees for Meals on Wheels Atlanta, a charitable organization that provides daily meals to senior citizens in need. When not in the restaurants, you'll find Chef Nick reading, hiking, or spending time with his wife, two daughters, and his dog. Chef Nick, thank you so much for being here.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, I see you're in the heart of everything, being with your apron on, ready to rock and roll. Tell us all about your culinary journey for folks who are not familiar with the work you've done here in Atlanta.
Well, I started cooking 25 years ago, worked for some of the bigger restaurant groups in town, like Fifth Group and Concentrics. And then went and worked for a few smaller independents. I did food sales for a year, and that proved to me that I love chefing and not sales. Then I came back. My wife and I went traveling for about a year when we turned 30, and after that we settled in London, and I cooked in London for a year, and then moved back in 2012 to open my first restaurant in Atlanta, which was Salt Yard. Since then, I've opened X, Tintin, The Usual, Nick's West Side, was the culinary director for Dash Hospitality, and then decided that was too much, sold it all last year, started a butcher shop and market called Vice Kitchen. We're the only butcher shop with our own, I'll say, processing facility to keep it a little softer. And we also have our own American Wagyu cows, grass-fed cows, our own pigs and everything like that. And then I also run a hospitality consulting company called Harvest Hospitality, which is why I'm talking to you from a hotel room in Arizona right now. So.
I appreciate you catching us even on the road. So with years of experience running your own restaurants, Harvest Hospitality allows you to help guide and develop other culinary concepts. What are some projects that you're working on that you might be able to share with us?
I'll give you some of the ones I'm most excited about. Here in Arizona, my former business partner in some of the restaurants, actually two of them, opened a resort, a wellness resort called Savannah. So think of it, luxury spa treatments and clean eating, but still with a good cocktail and a glass of wine at the end of it kind of thing. So I'm out here just helping them get through a few little staffing issues and stuff like that. Another one that I'm really excited about is a friend of mine, Tanner, is opening a resort in North Georgia called Cypress. So essentially he's building a bunch of tiny homes on a 50-acre property in Jasper, and it's got a 200-foot waterfall on it. It's beautiful, and I'm doing all the culinary for them. So we've done a bunch of really fun ones, like I took an 800-pound gather grill into the middle of the woods in Jasper, and we cooked a gourmet brunch for everybody who did the groundbreaking ceremony when they did that. It was a lot of fun. Had a mimosa bar, everything. So, and then the rest of the consulting, it's interesting because, you know, it's the full breadth of the culinary world that I get to sort of touch. You know, whether it's helping a coffee shop get a more substantial food menu on, whether it's helping somebody with their branding, whether it's literally helping somebody take their concept and find a location and do all the build out and everything like that. You know, so it's something different every day, which my ADD likes.
Variety is the spice of life, so it's good to be able to touch different things. I'm blessed, right, to have a variety of different operators in my car, so I'm always learning something about whether it's meats or veggies or farming or whatnot, and I just feel like I'm learning and growing every day, so you get that immense exposure.
That's the key.
So I know that the pandemic obviously forced many restaurants to pivot quickly, and you rebranded a couple of concepts that you had, which turned out to be a good move, but totally understand your continued desire to continue to change. Talk to us about the process of rebranding an existing space and what goes into that.
Well, with the X and Tintin spaces, they were designed to be fairly high-end dining, and we just felt, as we were dealing with the pandemic, that that's not necessarily what people were craving, what they were coming back for. So we took our same ethos as far as, we're sourcing locally, we're cooking seasonally, but we just dialed back the I don't know, all the frou-frou-ness of it, and we just made it a more simple, local neighborhood restaurant. And I think people really responded to that. I think people were wanting to come back to something that was just more comforting and simple. And we made it through where, unfortunately some others didn't. So I think our move was proven correct. And the end of last year, I just felt it was time to move on from some of those concepts, and had a friend who was looking for a space, so it worked out. I sold it to him, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Carl's great.
Go eat it if you
Yes, I was going to say Carl's phenomenal. I just introduced him to his social media team, and also to a couple of investors back in the day.
Nice.
You have had a chance to dine?
I haven't yet. I've been a little busy since they opened, but they are buying meat from us, so I am kind of involved still.
Oh, you are. I love
so
that.
The American Wagyu strip on the Abyss menu comes from our farm.
So talk to us about kind of the evolution of food and the push into having a butcher shop and going kind of back to roots in a way, because I feel like we had Atlanta had a big push, I think, when Kevin Gillespie was all about wood fire and butchering his own animal. And then we had a little bit of a lull, and now we've got Vice, we've got Evergreen, we've got Kinship. Talk to me a little bit more about kind of the push into that realm.
Well, I think people are just more and more interested these days in where their food comes from. And not just where it comes from, but how it lived or existed before it got to your table. And for us, having the processing facility, lets us really control it. So it's a closed loop for us. So, we control the animals and how they live, what they eat, how they're treated, and then we control their trip to the processing. We control that experience as well, and then we control how it's packaged and presented. So, I think we're unique in the amount of control we have over our product, and then also there's nobody else trying to make money off of it. So, there's no middlemen. So I think we can offer a great value for a great product. Our animals are all GAP certified, which is humane. Our grass-fed are AGA certified, which is American Grass-Fed Association. All of our animals are NAE, so that's no antibiotics ever, as opposed to sometimes when it's labeled natural, that really just means the animal didn't have it for 2 weeks before they died. So, some of that marketing stuff could be misleading. And then all of our seafood is certified sustainable, MSC certified too. So, I think people care about the ethos behind their food. So it's just kind of a natural evolution for me to go in this direction. And to be 100% honest with you, the butcher shop has slightly better hours than a restaurant. So I can be home cooking dinner for my family every night. So.
Beautiful. But also being able to
as long as I'm not in Arizona, anyway.
Of course, but also in a butcher shop, you're able to teach and have that personal connection that you otherwise don't get to have directly with those guests in a restaurant, because you've got a server, bartender, manager, etc. in the middle. I think, from a butcher shop and hearing the work that you're doing, I listened to a podcast episode the other day that said that kids as young as 7 and 8 years old now are going through puberty. And a lot of that has to do with the antibiotics and hormones that are coming from our food supply. And so it caught me off guard, because, I know obviously the proliferation of, soaps and washing our hands and all of this, but we're basically creating superbugs because inevitably they're, evolving because we're fighting against them. So to hear that the methods in which you are working with these animals is as clean as possible is very rewarding.
Yeah, I think it's important. I have a 9 and a 7-year-old, and we see kids in school that are developing just a grade or two ahead of them, and I won't get into any specifics, but yeah, it's obviously all the hormones in their milk and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I just think trying to live a cleaner lifestyle is important for us and for the kids.
Cool. So you were the first chef to be elected to the board of trustees for Meals on Wheels. You've also fostered partnerships and obviously are working with. So do you have a farm, or you're working with local farmers?
So both.
Right.
The American Wagyu cows are 100% owned and ours. We start them in Iowa and then bring them to Georgia to finish the process. And then for the grass-fed beef, we have a small herd of ours, and then we have partner farms in and around the LJ area, which is where the processing facility is, that grow to our spec and grow to our standard for us. So there are cows because we commit to them from early on, but somebody else is doing the actual raising. We just tell them how we want them raised, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense. I have been talking to a lot of friends in the industry, and a year ago they said, Edie, you have to buy a cow. You have to buy a pig. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And I said, thinking through like the size of these animals and being able to store the meat at the end of the day that they produce, I go, man, I would love to, but then I have to buy a massive freezer. So I've been talking to a couple of my neighbors to say, hey, do you want to have a pig? Do you want a quarter of a cow with me? Just trying to understand who might be able to share in that investment, because to your point, understand who is raising it, who is caring for it, the manner in which it's being, put through to the steaks that we see on our plates at the end of the day is really important.
Yeah, we do actually a fair amount of quarter cows. We'll have a group of 4, 5, 6 families come in and just split it up, and we package it out all for them, and each family gets their couple ribeyes, all the prime cuts, and then it's filled in with all the rest of the things that make up a cow. That people sometimes think cows are made up of strips, ribeyes, and fillets, but there's a whole lot of other beautiful pieces on there. But it's a great value. You end up paying like $7 a pound for all this beautiful beef. So
long as we have not necessarily portion control, but moderation, right? As much as my boys, I know I've got a 12 and 14-year-old, they're like, Mom, I want a steak today, I want a burger tomorrow. Well, no, guys, like,
and then
you
I want
gotta
another
mix it.
steak after my first steak. Yeah, I remember being 14.
Oh, for sure. And both of my boys are athletes, so it's like I watch them eat, and it's like I haven't fed them in weeks. It's wild.
Well, it's like my favorite Julia Child quote is, everything in moderation, even moderation. Sometimes you gotta go big.
I've heard that one. I love that. So tell me a little bit more about, beyond obviously the investment in working with local farmers, have you seen kind of the trickle down effect of giving back to the community, and how has that affected your approach to food?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always tried to, be pretty charitably involved in our communities. A, because I could use all the good karma I can get, right? So, that's one start. But B, I think it also gives you a way to, develop a lot more relationships in those communities. Since we opened in February at Vice, we've done a number of charity events for different customers. And, that takes a lot of them from being an occasional customer to a very loyal customer, not just because you supported their charity, but because you got to spend that, extra bit of time with them. If we just catered a golf tournament that raised money for trafficking, or for anti-trafficking, obviously.
Yes.
And it gave us a chance to spend a couple hours with those 2 regulars. They're very passionate about this project for them, and we're very grateful that we supported it. And now, not only do we support a good cause, but they're an even more loyal customer. They send in more people, so it's altruistic and selfish all at the same time, I guess, but it's still a good thing to do. So,
how did you pick the location for Vice? What kind of guided you that direction?
I just think I wanted to do something a little closer to home. I've been commuting almost an hour to all the restaurants. I live in Peachtree Corners. And I think the opportunity outside the perimeter is just ever expanding. The population out there is growing. The demographics out there are able to support the kind of businesses that we're talking about. The commercial real estate's cheaper. I mean, I could go on. I just think OTP is currently an easier gig than inside the perimeter.
I completely agree with you. I am, whether we're representing the restaurateurs or representing the local owners who want to attract locals, for me, it's always the first question is, where do you live? Because you are going to be able to touch, feel, see, build connection to your community if you live there. I don't want you commuting because at the end of the day, we, as much as we can listen to amazing podcasts like this or others, time is the most valuable resource and we're never getting any more of that. So the more that we can be effective with that time, I think the better for all of us, holistically.
For sure, 100%. Yeah, now that I'm not spending an hour and a half to 2 hours a day in the car, my quality of life is better. It gives me more time to, work out before work or something like that. So.
Get that. So throughout your career, I know you've led multiple teams and launched several concepts. What is the key to being a successful leader in the food and beverage industry?
I think you've got to empower and inspire a team, because you can't, when you stop running one outlet and you start running multiples, you'll quickly, or maybe not quickly enough, realize that you can't do it all and you can't be such a control freak anymore. And to be able to do that effectively, you have to set up really good systems for your employees so that they can be successful, so that they feel confident and ready and able to do their job. But then you also got to inspire them on a daily basis to be great, because in our business, yesterday doesn't matter all that much. People don't care how good the steak you cooked yesterday was. They care about the steak you're cooking right fucking now. So you have to give them constant motivation and goals and criticisms and compliments to help keep pushing them forwards. And you have to delegate, or trust but verify is what we always say. Since I can't do it all, I have to delegate out tasks, but you can't delegate out blindly and just assume that people are going to get things done. So trust but verify is one of the mantras we use a lot.
Sure. So I just finished reading 11 Rings. Phil Jackson, who is the coach of, sports is definitely not my forte. So living in Georgia and all the buzz around SEC, I'm lucky enough to just pay attention to the score to know what attitude people will have the following day. But what most fascinated me reading this book is not my love of basketball, because I kind of glazed over. I know a couple of names, but I wanted to understand his leadership style and what inspired him to be able to pull folks who appear very individually focused on their brand, etc. Dennis Rodman, for example, who apparently was very inspired by Madonna to have his own identity. How do you get someone like that to come into and foster a team mentality rather than trying to self-promote? So I think it's always fascinating to learn from other leaders. How do you build that team and encourage them, empower, delegate, inspire? And he studied a lot of Asian philosophy, which I really appreciated because I have as well.
Yes, he studied a lot of Buddhism. He also took a lot of acid back in the day, so that I think helped expand his mind as well.
Kind of detail.
I think you want to encourage individuality, and then you just have to realize that every person's the way that you manage every person is not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? One guy might need an arm around the shoulder and a pat on the back, and the other guy might need a kick in the ass. But you got to identify what each person responds to. Kick in the ass is probably the wrong phrase, but somebody else might respond to being challenged.
We got you. Yeah, some people just need to be pushed a little harder.
Exactly. So you got to kind of just find out what makes each person tick and then manage them that way.
It's kind of like the 5 love languages. I ask, any new hire, what do you like giving and what do you like receiving? So at least, if you're aware of it, then you can teach me so that I don't have to practice and figure it out. Let's just talk about it right now. Even communication styles. There's some people who prefer a phone call, they prefer an email, they prefer a text. So really just asking that early on, I think sets the tone for a great relationship.
I agree.
So
there's also a book that was written called, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like there's 5 different types of intelligences, and if you can identify what each person's intelligence type is, it'll let you know how to interact and manage. And I read it as a book on parenting because it's about, finding what makes your kid tick and all that kind of stuff, but it applies to a lot of life, not just Phoebe and Autumn. So
you're gonna have to share it. When you remember, just shoot me a text and I'll put it in the show notes.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So if someone was looking to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you like to offer them?
Don't. No, I'm just kidding. I think one of the big things that I tell people when they're thinking about doing culinary as a career is don't put the cart before the horse or whatever. Like, find out if you actually like this before you commit and put resources towards it. Because there's so many people that were in culinary school with me. They went to culinary school, paid all that money, graduated, and then by the time they got into a restaurant, realized, A, they didn't really like the pressure, the late nights, the stress, or they weren't very good at it. Because, in culinary school, you get 4 hours to plate up 2 dishes. If I take 4 hours to plate up 2 dishes in a restaurant, I'll get fired pretty quickly. So, I think everybody should go and see if they love the business before they spend the money on culinary school or commit to it to that level. So
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how you think Food Network has helped or hurt the restaurant industry. You're talking about 4 hours, to plate 2 dishes. I mean, they're on the clock and, they love the pressure and the insanity and, the surprise ingredients. So I'm curious to hear your take.
I think it's done a lot to expand the awareness and increase people's interest. But I also think it's made a lot of people that are new in the industry feel like, I don't want to sound like the old get off my lawn guy or something like that, but there's a lack of people wanting to put in the work and pay their dues and work their way up the ladder and earn it and learn all the things you need. People coming out of culinary school aren't sous chefs yet, but they all think they should be. And I think that glitz and glamour of the TV chef has made people think that they can skip a lot of those kind of things. And in fairness, some of them can, because you can parlay success on the TV show into more opportunities or, pop-ups or brick and mortars or whatever. So there is some truth to it, but I think it has made people think of fame more than career sometimes.
Well, also maybe a little bit less of the foundation, right? I've got all the glitz and glam, but I have a restaurant that maybe isn't doing great from health records, staffing, and it's not clean. And so you kind of lose sight of it. It's good to go kind of back to the roots and understand where it all started.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. To run a successful restaurant looks somewhat glamorous, I guess, if you're there in the middle and it's busy and the vibe is great. But I guarantee you that chef at some point was entering invoices into a spreadsheet or mopping a bathroom or dealing with some broken equipment or, all kinds of things. So there's a lot of unglamorous parts to owning any business. So
I'm curious if someone was young, I'm asking a little bit of a personal question because I have a son who loves food. Would you recommend culinary school today, or would you recommend they apprentice or work for a variety of folks first before they contemplate that investment?
I would definitely say go work first. I might even say just go work, period. Because you learn a lot more in the restaurants with the pressure and with all that than I think you'd do in culinary school. At least I did. I guess I shouldn't speak for the entire population of humanity, but I left culinary school after about a year because I'd been cooking already, and I was like, I kind of know a lot of this stuff already. I feel like it'd be better served just getting a second job. So I got a job in the morning as opposed to going to culinary school. So I was getting paid to learn, and then I kept my job at night. And I think that was the right path for me. But I think everybody should go into a restaurant and work before they go to culinary school for sure.
That I'm gonna have to agree with you.
I actually have a funny story. Somebody asked me that question at like Taste of Atlanta or one of those festivals or whatever. I was on stage doing a demo, and I basically gave that same answer, like kind of saying I didn't think culinary school was worth it. And as I'm like finishing my little mantra, I look up in the back and there's a giant banner in the tent that I'm giving this demonstration in. It's just sponsored by Le Cordon Bleu. I was like, what, to each their own?
Yes. But you kind of predicted their future, unfortunately.
True.
Yeah. So kind of, again, going into that vertical integration, what are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities in the world of food in the next couple of years?
I mean, I think that's pretty broad. I think people are more interested in more unique things than they ever have been. So, when I started cooking in Atlanta, if you were going to do a fancy high-end restaurant, it kind of had to be just a high-end Southern restaurant with a good piece of trout on the menu and fried chicken and all that kind of stuff. But I think people are much more open to new and different kind of cuisines and maybe even searching that out. So I think there's a lot more opportunity for exploring different concepts and try to be a little bit more unique. I think don't get me wrong, the classic Southern restaurant is never going anywhere, but I think you'll see less of those and you'll see more, unique, ethnic, vegan, whatever those kind of things are. Because I think people are much more open to that than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like Filipino cuisine is having a very big moment, especially in the Southeast right now.
Yep,
just
for sure.
Very unique and special and different, and also
and delicious.
Really beautiful. Yes, the colors are so captivating.
Yeah, I mean, I just think people want something a little bit different for their money nowadays. So,
how have some of your international travels influenced, what or how you're preparing what you do?
I mean, I think whenever you travel, you're kind of traveling with your taste buds in mind. So you're picking up techniques or flavor profiles or spices or approaches. But I also think, traveling and eating is the best way to experience a culture. You get to probably talk with a local over it or, find the local food and where the locals are going, and you get a little bit more authentic experience of that country, that city, whatever it is, that person. My wife always jokes that whenever we plan a trip, I'm really just planning a food tour, and she wants to do other things too. And I kind of view like the sightseeing as what we're doing in between meals. But I just do think it's the best way to experience a country, whether that's, I've done some weird ones too. Like when I was in Kenya, we were doing a hike through the Ndoto Mountains, and I helped some of the tribes guys that were helping us do some of the cooking at night. So they honored me by giving me a warm glass of goat blood mixed with goat milk.
And how was it?
It was an honor.
That's very kind of you. Yeah, but it's also, it's kind of like playing an instrument, right? Like, or playing soccer. You can go anywhere in the world and pick up, soccer with someone, or pick up playing guitar and just bond through that shared experience. So as you were helping them cook, right? Like, you're like, oh, exactly. You're our brother. Let's go.
And now I have a very unique experience to tell about it. So.
Of course. So, I have loved chatting with you. Where can our listeners get more information about you and your work?
You can go to my website. That's harvesthospitality.com or vicekitchen.com. Find us on all the social medias as well. Or just come to 6000 Medlock Bridge Parkway and get some delicious steaks. Although we're actually going to start delivery, so you don't even have to come. You can just order online.
I appreciate that. Yes. Well, a big thank you to our guest today, Chef Nick, for sharing such valuable insights about his passion for food and his commitment to giving back. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep savoring the flavors of success. Stay hungry for more stories from the leaders and innovators in the culinary world.
My name is Chef Nick Leahy, and you're listening to the Great Hustle and Heart podcast.